Good morning, welcome to this replay. I'm here with this book, one of the most impacting books of my life in the recent history, along with some other books and some messages about the bots. And what we're going to talk about is the question of, is the universe stacked against most people who want to learn? It's a question that's on my mind all the time because of something called the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule. And it's a really interesting and amazing principle, and something you want to know about if you don't. And if you're hopping on the live, say hello. We're going to talk about happiness beyond thought. We're going to talk about the distribution of how learners can get into a better state so they can learn against the bots, right? Or with the bots, as the case may be. And say hello if you're in the chat, hit the thumbs up, let me know you're engaged, and if this is a topic of concern, I'd love to hear from you because I think it concerns all of us, and it's something I'm always thinking about. Is it somehow the case that people cannot learn because of reasons that are beyond their control? It gets into issues of free will, it gets into issues of the responsibility of teachers, that even is it possible for teachers to do anything in order to up the ante for students and learners, given that there may be this principle in the universe that actually spreads out competence regardless of anyone's attempts to make it different. And we're in an era right now where the internet is doing all kinds of weird stuff to human brains that may be stacking the chips in the favor of more people, or it may actually be stacking it against the favor of more people. So I'm very curious about it. I don't pretend to have any particular solid conclusion on it, although I have made observations over the years about it. And I think that there's a real good point that Gary Weber makes in a recent little discussion we've been having on his blog about physical books, actual real books, and how he doesn't want to publish his new book in Kindle or audio or anything because there's just a kind of evidence that no one is going to, or very few people are going to do anything with it because it's in digital format. So if you want it, you got to get it physical only. And I think there's great merit to that argument, even though part of my heart and soul is just like, no, this is a numbers game. The Pareto principle, or the distribution of learners and so forth, there are still potentially millions and millions of audio-only people who will take action, they will be engaged, they will do something like hit the thumbs up and say hello. And if we are just going to say, well, there's nobody engaging anymore in the digital amnesia world, that we shouldn't even bother, or there's no point, and so forth in doing that, then, what disservice are we potentially doing to humanity and so forth? So I don't want to make some big argument against him, but at the same time, it is an important question, and it's one that I ask myself all the time. Just throw your hands up and say, well, no one's doing anything. Like I'm saying, hey guys, hit your thumbs up and say hello, and like nobody's saying anything. It's just crickets, right? So do you give up in the face of that inattention, that unwillingness to participate and engage, when you know as an educator that the only way you're ever going to get anything to happen in the world is if you actually do something, if you actually take action, right? Like DOC, right? Doing is the origin of confidence. Doing is the origin of creativity. Doing is the origin of control. It's the origin of courage. It's the origin of everything that you would ever possibly want in the world. And you got to take it one sip at a time, which is to study, implement, and practice against the bots, but potentially with the bots, because bots are really boring old tools succeeding. So the Memory Palace is just an old tool that still continues to succeed, especially if you make sure you don't bury it in apps, you don't bury it in online technology and so forth. But what do? Do you just not create digital media for people because there is a lack of engagement that people are showing from digital amnesia, digital dementia, the Google effect, and all that stuff? Or do you say, okay, look, we're just going to go for that 20% of people who are going to do something and hope that 80% through luck or whatever somehow get changed over time because of repeated exposure to particular messages, to particular lessons that will eventually cause some people to turn the tide, to join in and to actually take action. So I don't know what the solution is, and certainly hoping to find some engagement from people who might have an opinion, which would be the learners themselves. What is it that's going to help? There's a really interesting interview on the Waking Up podcast recently about this. So I highly encourage you to go and listen to Waking Up podcast, because there's something about the whole wisdom of the crowds thing as well, where when you ask people what it is that they want, they will say one thing, but they will actually not follow up on that. So they seem not to want what they want. So this is a podcast called Hidden Motives with a guy named Robin Hanson. And you could be very, very pessimistic and very discouraged by it, and just run away from any kind of effort that you're doing for the world because of the lack of engagement. Or you could just show up to this and see what you can do to actually have some difference going on. I'm not sure. I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm very, very, very sympathetic to the idea that one would restrict their information and not make digital versions of information. So I'm curious what everybody thinks about that. But since no one's saying anything, then I guess we're not having a hangout. We're not having a chat. And this is exactly a demonstration of what the fear is that people just don't engage. They don't want to engage. So then what is the reason why? What's going on? What's the resistance? What's the problem? I think a lot of these things, like doing YouTube Live, which I really love. Julie says, I'm here. Julie from California. Okay, cool. So this is the thing. Should the teacher be a bully? And where I was going with this, Julie, is street magicians. I often think of the whole YouTube Live thing as a street magician. So some people will come on here in the comments later and they'll say, you took 5 minutes to get to your point and so forth. But what they don't realize is that you have to actually get on these things and then just start talking and keep talking, because there's actually no one there. And I've done experiments. I've posted times where we're going to do this, and actually more people show up when I don't post the time than they do if I do post the time, which is to the point of the lack of engagement out there. So there's a sort of street magician aspect to this. And how does the street magician create an engaging environment and an entertaining environment? Well, the best of the best that I've studied, and I have studied it actually because I am a bit of a magician myself, is they will make a noise of some kind while they have a platform there and they have a rope around, or they'll either have like a real rope or an implied rope that they just imagine is there. And as soon as they get one person, they will, and ideally it's a family that has a kid, they'll get that kid on their side of the rope and bring them closer and start to engage with the kid so that the kid stays. And the idea is to keep making noises so that people block the parents from leaving even when they get their kid back, right? Because now there's people behind that parent. And then the rope gets pulled in closer and closer as a crowd assembles, and the magician is saying, well, this great thing is coming, this great thing is coming. And I think about this a lot because they keep pitching the big finale. And of course the finale is going to be when they pass around the hat, right? Because how else are they going to do magic if they are starving, right? So they're always sort of like engineering this, scientifically doing this. So the point is here is that this is part of what is going on and has to go on, and what the technology is figuring out online. But is it leading to an effect? Is it leading to an effect? Martin's here says he prefers a real physical book, but ebooks have their advantage, fast searching, for example. Martin, thank you for that, and thanks for taking the time to post. I prefer physical books as well. I found, I haven't done every form of digital book under the sun, but in Kindle I find it is okay. When I used to read Kindle, it's okay for search, but some kinds of search it's not really great for, such as indexes and so on. But yeah, there have been advantages to ebooks at certain points in my life and for search, but often in like PDFs, for example, some of them are searchable, some of them aren't. Really depends. It's a case-by-case basis. And even with a physical book can be resistant to search in some sense. It depends on how you set it up. It depends on how you read it, which is one of the reasons why I read books in particular ways. And you know, it just depends. And when I do my Chinese practice here, like this book here is so good for Chinese, and then I actually make another form of cross-indexing with the Freedom Journal. Um, but it all really comes down to the individual learner, and the onus and the responsibility ultimately comes down on teachers meeting students halfway, and then making that engagement in whatever form it is. So I do have to wonder about all this, but the thing with this book is it's so impacting, and I know that the new one that's coming out is going to be even more impactful, or I predict that, and so there's a kind of longing for it to be available in as many formats as possible, but there's logic in making it only a physical book, which arguably and conceivably increases its value for those who are willing to engage in it. So I'm just kind of fascinated with the tension there, and how it impacts us all, especially in the context of digital amnesia and so forth. Because the problem with the digital amnesia thing and digital dementia and the Google effect and so forth is that, and I could be right or wrong about this, because it's real. It really is having an effect on people. It really is creating problems and issues, and those issues need attention. And the answer is digital fasting, greater balance, and so forth. But by the same token, we don't want to be hypnotized and seduced into romanticizing the past. So is it really the case that back in the day, before internet ruined everything, there were more people who were engaged in the books? And so I wrote to Gary, for example, that I recall a deep sadness when I was an undergrad using, I didn't mention this to him, but I used a typewriter to do my first essays. Computers existed. The internet was real at that time, and even email addresses existed, but I didn't have an email address until the end of the first year of my first year of university, which is just odd to me now, but it's true. And I was just kind of like, what the heck do I need this for? And I chose the most goofy, longest address you could even imagine that was untypable, because I was never going to use it, right? And I actually had that until my third year of university, and then it became more and more essential, so I ultimately got a much shorter and typable address. But, you know, it's just a bit strange at that time that I noticed people, I was just deeply disappointed constantly by my peers that they just weren't showing up to the task. The teacher says, hey, we're going to read Hamlet. I'm like, yeah, Hamlet, we're going to read it. Oh, and we're going to get to write a 20-page essay? Awesome. And they're just like, oh my God, we have to read. Oh no, we have to write. And I'm just like, you're insane. I'm like, can I have an extra assignment, please? And I'll never forget this, actually, because I wanted to compare Hamlet with David Cronenberg movies, right? And the professor was like, no, write about Hamlet. But I went ahead and wrote that other essay anyway, you know? And so that's the question here. Is it just something in the people's genetics that drives them to perform, or can it be coached? Can it be learned? Can we push towards it? What's possible here? And are there little tricks that you can do it? And is the technology and the reach that technology has diminishing the amount of people who are going to engage, or is it increasing it? Or is it at odds with itself? Is there something in the past that we have lost, or was it just always this way? And one of the books to read to think deeply about this, and is a bit controversial perhaps, is Plato's Republic. Now, I don't remember Plato's Republic in every single in and out and nuance and detail and so forth, but he seemed very deeply concerned with this question and what to do in societies, given the fact that there seems to be this distribution of competence, there seems to be a distribution of will, and there seems to be a distribution of follow-through, and there seems to be all kinds of distributions of the kinds of people that are out there, and he starts to label what these different people are and how best to govern them and so forth. And that's a dangerous idea, and different societies have played it out in different ways, and even to this day, you know, there are some societies where you're classed at some point in school, and then parts of your future, parts of college that you can go to and so forth, are all determined by the kind of person you are, without giving you a chance to be any other kind, or even encouraging you to be any other kind. So that's kind of sad, but maybe it's not. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. I know that there's a certain path that I was able to take through sheer stubbornness that was given to me rather than sought out. I didn't seek out to be a stubborn human being, but when I was in grade 5, they were making decisions about who was going to be in band class and who wasn't. And they told me initially that I wasn't going to be in band class because I had no sense for music. Vane asks, what would you say about IQ and intelligence? Thank you, Vane. That's great. Thanks for the question. I'm going to address that in a second. But to follow through with this thing about music, like, I couldn't play the recorder according to how school wanted it to be played. And they said I was tone deaf and that I couldn't read music and yada, yada, yada. And they weren't going to let me in to music school. Now, I don't remember all the sort of ins and outs of it, but my family fought because my dad's like, look, the dude plays guitar, you know, like, and I wanted to play bass, electric bass in band. In the band class, they said, no, not only can you not even play the recorder the way we want you to play the recorder, but we're not going to buy a bass guitar and we're not going to buy an amplifier and so on. So again, I don't really know the whole story of how they finally squeaked me in, but they said you could play the trombone because that's the easiest instrument. You don't have to press buttons and so forth, and it's bass, right? Great, we're in. Now, here's the interesting thing. I didn't want to learn how to read music for whatever reason. I didn't have a very good diet when I was a kid. There was all kinds of disruptions in terms of parties at night and drama, right? So I didn't sleep all that well. And also I didn't sleep all that well because I was a fascinated reader, and somehow I had gotten hold of a flashlight and I used to read all night, and so I didn't get a whole lot of sleep. And so on and so on. And ultimately I learned how to play the trombone by watching the slide of the guy beside me. I think his name was Adam. And so I would just memorize where his slide was and completely ignore the music. And I also had a good ear for music. So I would learn things by ear. And I had a great friend, Ricky, who also would teach me piano and stuff. And I would just cheat by memorizing where his hands were. And I would learn that way. And at some point I also got a bass, and I was playing bass and so forth. But when year 2 came around, grade 7 band, I had to change my strategy because all of a sudden we had 2 trombone parts. And then I had to learn how to read music because I couldn't just memorize where the slide was. I had to actually follow my own parts and figure it out and so forth. And so that's when I finally learned how to read music. And thank goodness, because music is beautiful. It's, but there's just, people have different paths. And if you exclude them, then they may never find their entrance into how they're going to read music. And as a consequence of being able to read music and so forth, well, I've been on tour all over the place, playing bass in bands. I've played in all kinds of bands. I have all kinds of wonderful recordings. I wound up studying sitar for 10 years. And then I had to learn how to read music in a way that's orally transferred and visual. And there's some markings that you can make on the page and so forth. But as far as I know, there's no standard sort of notation and tablature and so forth, or at least I didn't discover any. It's all just sort of like how your teacher teaches you and what markings they make on the page to help your memory, and then what you memorize and what you understand about the concept of sitar. And I only ever focus on Tansel. But in any case, it's almost as if there is something in the universe that wants to exclude more people. And I saw it again and again and again. And I'm thinking to when I became a professor myself, or my first years as a student, an assistant teacher, the TA, teaching assistant. And my third year of doing that, it was in a course called The Networked Imagination, about art on the internet. And the professor said at the first day of that class, most of you will drop out in the next 3 months. And of those who remain, a bunch of you will fail. And I just thought, well, my heart broke for one thing. And I was just deeply annoyed. I'm annoyed to this day that person would have the wherewithal to tell 500 people in a room that most of them were going to fail. But at the same time, she wasn't wrong, so really wild. Anyway, let's get on to Vane here, who says, what would you say about IQ and intelligence? And you continue, I'm a med student and was told I wasn't too bright as a kid, but I learned different strategies to help me improve my scores. Okay, well, first thing about IQ and intelligence. I mean, there's a tension here, right? Do numbers and raw data and scientific stuff tell us truths about the world? And more than that, do they tell us truths that are reliable enough that we can make predictions? And if we're going to make those predictions, then what are the ethics around how we shape and direct and control human behavior and so forth? By the way, if you're hopping on the live and you haven't said hello, hit the thumbs up. Let me know in the comments where you are in the world. And we're talking about, should books be in digital form? Should we make decisions based on numbers and the 80-20 rule and all that stuff? So yeah, the question comes down to, what are we doing with IQ and how is it being used and for what ethical principles and conclusions and so forth? And is it cutting out people who could develop competence, or is it helping them develop competence? But at the end of the day, I mean, I think you've got to just take it all with a grain of salt and not start labeling people and then treating them in particular ways, because we just don't know what can what can serve as a catalyst that helps people break through. And we also don't know when people are going to find in themselves something that they're just going to glom onto, that they're going to grasp and run with and actually do something incredible. And if we make too many judgments about that, we can be cutting out massive amounts of the species that just could otherwise do incredible things. And so it kind of comes down to, you know, a lot of things about like just what your philosophy and what your feeling is for what the world is as such, and the worldhood of the world as such, which is the name of a great No Means No album, is both very, very simple to lay down and incredibly difficult to lay down. And he or she who would pretend to know is really a strange fish, actually. And yet at the same time, we all know so much. We know so much. We are the only ones who can know, right? You are you, and you're the only one who can know the things that you know. And you know them with a particular intensity relative to your willingness to observe what you know, because you're the only one who's ever going to know it, right? And that's not mystical woo-woo or anything like that. That's just a plain statement of fact that if you test it yourself, you will find to be true. You will find that the one who knows is within you, right? There's an observation going on of the things that you know. And if you are observant of the observer, then you will see that you're the only one in which any of this is happening, right? Because it's your brain that somehow is processing all of this. And I was thinking of this morning. I was in bed and I was looking in the mirror and watching an airplane fly across the sky. And I was thinking, where is this airplane, right? Well, self-evidently, the airplane is in the sky, far, far away from me. But the airplane is also in the brain that is observing the airplane. And it's actually more in the brain than it is in the sky, because I mean, I know this sounds all weird, but really, where else could it be? Where else is any of this, right? It's all in your brain. It's in your chemicals, in your chemistry, relative to how your chemistry is processing all this stuff. This is why the movie like The Matrix, and I'm gonna go see Tron tonight. Tron is playing at the theater. Why these movies are so infectious to people is because they're trying to get you to realize that this is all happening in your brain, whether you're in the Matrix or not, right? Whether you're in the Matrix or you're freed from the Matrix, you're somehow in your skin, right? You're in this chemical bath, and all the things that are happening are in your bath. You're a unit in which all these chemicals process all the things that are to be processed, and all those are always in the now, right now. And the extent to which you get to enjoy all of that has to do with your connection to and your observation of a basic fact, which is that you're the only one who gets to actually have any of that happen to you, right? And then when you realize that, everything just changes. It's like an optical illusion. You know, there's optical illusions where sometimes you can only see the one part of the optical illusion, But then something happens and you have a shift in perspective, and then you see the other part of the optical illusion. And when that shift happens, there's almost no going back. You now, every time you see the illusion, you're like, yeah, that's two faces and a vase. But you can remember the time when you only saw two faces, or you only saw the vase. But after that you have this observation, there's no going back. And it's the same thing with things like what they call non-duality, and sometimes Advaita Vedanta, or whatever. There's pronunciation things that go on in the world, but it's really that the case that if you come to realize that you are really all things, because what else could you be other than that which is in the perception of all things, and that within you that perceives all those things is itself connected to all things, right? then it's just a very different life to live. And I don't think there's any right or wrong to it. I think it's just that if you do that science, and it is a science, the science of self-inquiry, which is why this book changed so much for me so quickly. And it's one of his arguments in this book, is that if you just do this stuff in a particular way, you could probably accelerate the extent to which you come to these realizations if you're scientific about it. And it's what I love so much about this book. And there's just a way of doing it, and it is a science. It's a science in the truest sense of asking questions, doing experiments, observing what happens when you do the experiments, and then optimizing the experiments to get better results. So it's really wild. Julie says, I like the live chat spontaneity, but it is tough not knowing at least the days you may post. My week consists of, is he going to post today? Is it now? I spend more time online trying to catch you. Oh, well, thank you, Julie. You know why? One of the reasons why I don't do it is because it consistently fails. So whenever I do say, hey, this is when it's going to happen, less people show up consistently. I mean, I can do further experiments and so forth. So that's one thing. I find it deeply personally disappointing to do that. The other reason is, I've got my own issues with health. And even today I thought, well, maybe I'm not going to do it today because I'm having a sort of attack of psoriasis, arthritis. And what if I do have a really bad attack of psoriasis, arthritis? I've told all these people I'm going to show up at such and such a time. I don't like to make promises I can't keep. I only like to make promises that I can keep, which means I don't really make many promises at all. I make the promises that I can keep, and can keep cheerfully. Because otherwise what ends up happening is you have a debt in your head. And one of the paths to freedom is to eliminate those debts of things that you actually can't cheerfully fulfill on, right? So you should design your life in a way, if you can, to only have debts that you can cheerfully fulfill. And that's another reason why I don't do it. And it's sort of a tension between those two. Julie says, yes, I understand. Now, Julie, how I'm thinking about how to resolve this is, and this goes back to the conversation that I'm sort of having with Gary on his blog, which I'm going to post the link to that below. Actually, if anybody is feeling kind, you could look up for us, Happiness Beyond Thought, the blog, and post it here in the chat so everybody can see it. But it's just look up Happiness Beyond Thought in Google and it'll come up. And if you go to the blog, you'll see this conversation that has been emerging. But one of the things that I've been thinking a lot of is, what would the school look like for the things that I do online? Like the one that's in the building beside the coffee shop. And how would that work? I'm thinking a lot about it. And I wonder then, what would be the equation in which I would cheerfully show up to that on a regular schedule, and what would make it sing, what would make it hum, what would make it vibrant and palpable and warm and fuzzy and actually help people? Because otherwise, if it's not a happy, cheerful thing, it's not going to help people at the level that it could. And so that's something I think about a lot. I thought about making a bookstore, and the bookstore would be called Cafe Mnemonic. And in that bookstore would be as many memory-friendly foods and products that people could enjoy while they're looking at books, And those books would be heavily weighted towards memory improvement and exercises, and meditations, and puzzles, and cool stuff. And then it would have classes once a week, a couple times a week. We'd do YouTube live of the classes, right? And there would be a meditation center in there, and the meditation would be heavily weighted towards things that I've learned, for example, from Happiness Beyond Thought, and also, Gary on his YouTube channel has a great video on Kirtan Kriya, which is just Satanama, and then you can do it this way and in reverse order and so forth. And I'm like doing these endless variations on it and really getting deep and enjoying it, and it's just mind-boggling. Now, I've built up a certain reserve because I've meditated for so long in so many different ways and so forth, but what would be the cool thing? What would be the cafe mnemonic? How would that work? And would it work, right? I don't know. Any thoughts? I mean, if you had in your community a meditation and memory improvement center, would you go? I'd love to know. Let me know either in the chat now or in the comments later or by email or whatever. I would love to know if that actually would be a proposition that would work. Now, we know actually, Vane says, hell yes. Well, thank you, Vane. And thumbs up if you also say, hell yeah. And that's a good life proposition, right? Is it like, hell yeah? That's kind of the conversation that I'm having with Gary. Like, hell yeah, to make audio and Kindle and so forth. And he's like saying a different thing, or there's a different thing to be said that is coming through. But in any case, it's really great. Oh, Michael's here. Michael, thanks for saying hello. Good to see you live as well. Thanks for saying hello, and I love this. Apparently now YouTube has the chat visible on the screen afterwards, so don't have to have that nightmare on my head anymore, because I was really deeply concerned about it. But now it seems to be solved. Anyway, Vane asked, did meditation improve your focus? Vane, yes. I think that there's a strong argument to be made between the pairing of meditation and memory training. And memory training is known to improve your memory, but meditation is also known to improve your memory. And so when you bring the two together, wow, like there's no end to it. Memory is focus, and meditation is focus. It is exactly a training. X Bluebells is here. Thanks for saying hello. Can't post links in chats. Oh, well, thank you for trying. There may be a setting that I set for that, actually, now that I think about it, or that was set by default and then I left, because then, of course, some people might abuse that privilege. But in any case, thank you for trying. I'll see about changing that setting, because I think I trust all y'all, and maybe we can remove any uncouth chats at a different point. Well, in any case, I'm interested over time to see if more people are interested in doing this. But to just answer Vane, yes, meditation improved my focus. Meditation improved my focus from the very beginning, and I was very, very fortunate in having a number of experiences all happen at a very short period of time, where I was able to learn self-hypnosis, because I took a certification in hypnosis for my PhD research. I mean, it was a kind of an odd leap of logic that I took there, but one that was very important. I was doing my dissertation on friendship, the philosophy of friendship, and how friendship is represented in the movies. And I understood that friendship involves a lot of persuasion, because in Aristotle, in the Nicomachean Ethics, there's really kind of three levels of friendship that he talks about. There's the friendship of pleasure, the friendship of utility, and the friendship of virtue. And the friendship of virtue is really when one friend helps another person become better. And that doesn't necessarily mean pleasure or utility. Natural Flow's here. Howdy, Chris. Thank you for being here. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, let me know where you are in the world. Hit that thumbs up. Always good to meet with y'all. And so, yeah, I was really influenced by that, and so I understood in the virtue friendship that we see this in the movies all the time. Is that friendships are actually, like, we're often seeing these friendships where one friend is in conflict with another at a certain point in the movies because they're trying to make the other person a better person, or they're both trying to make each other better people. So I thought persuasion, and then from persuasion I started to learn about hypnosis and so forth. And fortunately, hypnosis included self-hypnosis, which is essentially meditation, or it is related to meditation. You're getting yourself into states of calm and awareness and self-awareness and observation, and it's really brilliant what happens. And to thank you, Will, for your question about sensory deprivation. I'll sort of get to that as we talk about this, because in some sense meditation is a experience of self-deprivation. But yes, I have had not self-deprivation, but sensory deprivation. And I have had sensory deprivation at around this time, and in some sense still do. But the important thing here is that that happened to me, and at the same time I had my nose broken in a bar fight, very severely. And, you know, I drank a lot in university. Thank you, Memory Techniques, for combating that. But I drank like a fiend, and got really fat and gross and stuff like that. Anyway, I had my nose just terribly broken, and just by coincidence, I happened to be walking home one day and I noticed Fight Club, which was a training school for the Russian martial art Systema. So I learned Systema because I decided I was never going to get my nose broken again. And Systema, mercifully, is not really, at least from the people that I've learned it, it's not really about fighting. It's about receiving energy and directing it where you need it to go, and avoiding conflict, ending that conflict like that, and ending it in the most gentle ways. Now, there's other forms of Systema and so forth that are not exactly that, but I was just fortunate to find a pretty soft and gentle version of it, and then I had personal training in it in Vancouver for a long time, and we did knife fighting and all kinds of stuff, and I just learned how to be relaxed in the most incredible ways. And he was also into hypnosis and meditation and all this stuff, so I got a lot of things all just bound up, and I was so grateful for that, and I'm grateful for it to this day. And I hope these things happen for you too, because they're very freeing. And so to the sensory deprivation thing, one of my adventures around this time, when I was studying Systema, when I was studying self-hypnosis, and from self-hypnosis, I had already known about meditation, I was doing meditation and so forth. I used to spend a lot of time in the closet reading and sleeping and just meditating. And I'm not going to get into why, but I did. And it was, let's just say that it was one of those adventures in life where you have to spend lots of time in a closet. But I spent hours and hours and hours in this closet, meditating away, and it was amazing. And reading with a flashlight. And it was really amazing to be tucked away from the world in that way. But I would say that any time that you are meditating, you're already engaging in sensory deprivation. And when you do something like Kirtan Kriya, then you're also, it's not so much sensory deprivation, but it's sensory saturation, let's say. So when you're just saying Satanama, Satanama, you're actually immersing yourself, saturating yourself in sound, in the kinesthetic touch of your tongue in your mouth in particular ways, and the sensory touch here. And so it's deprivation from a different angle through saturation. Or maybe it's not deprivation at all, but in any case, it's certainly doing that. And why exactly it improves memory, I haven't looked at all the stuff, but it almost, to me, is self-evident that it will improve your memory, because you're remembering in the moment where you are in a pattern, and you're using memory and focus to strengthen your awareness of where you are in a pattern. And then when you start to juggle, so this, instead of this, and this, you're doing, oh, sorry, I whenever I'm talking, I do it wrong. But what you're doing is you're now juggling, and you're remembering where you are in a pattern, and you're maintaining now asynchronous, or not asynchronous, but out of pattern stuff, and so your memory is involved, it's being engaged, your attention is being engaged, and you're doing this all while singing, right? And remembering where you are in a sequence. It's very powerful. It's not unlike using a memory palace. So what is a memory palace, right? You've got your memory palace in your mind, you've got information, and you're remembering where you are in the memory palace, you're remembering what it was you did there, you're decoding it, you're doing it in and out of sequence, and you can also do this in and out of sequence, so you can go sa, na, and you don't have to say it all in sequence, you can do it backwards, you can do endless routines and so forth. Likewise, juggling. I've shot the video now. I was juggling, I trained myself to juggle, and then I trained myself to juggle while reciting the alphabet backwards. So I'm juggling something in my mind while I'm juggling with my hands. Is it meditation? Well, no. But is it not meditation? No, it's not meditation either. It's a very, very immersive thing that's asking the body and the mind to do something at the same time and remember where you are in a sequence while your body is remembering where it is in a sequence, and then it's tracking things that are changing. And that's what science is, right? Science is, can you create data that you can make predictions on, knowing that there's a calculus of change, right? And you can't exactly predict where things are, but you can control where they're going to be, right? Which is what you're doing with juggling. You're predicting, and you're calculating where things are going to be in the future by influencing them to be there. Right? It's brilliant. So then you add mind stuff. And also, I'm starting to practice singing in Chinese while doing this, which then is really challenging because I have to think, okay, so I'm singing the Smurf theme song in Chinese, which is not the Smurfs Chinese song that I remember as a kid because they use a different tone, right? And then I have to, or a different melody, and then I have to now, oh man, there's just like so many things going on while the hands are doing stuff. It feels great. Do it. It's awesome. Let's check in with our chats here. So Vane says, because juggling involves motor function, which improves cognitive ability. Same for music playing. Yeah, it's definitely related to music and so forth. Will, I hope that answers your question about sensory deprivation. If you're asking, have I been in a tank? No, I haven't, but I'd love to. And I'm sure I would just get along there fine. But I have done MRIs, and I've just, they give me all these warnings. They're like, you're going to be in here for like 15 minutes and you can't move. And I'm like, awesome. Like, couldn't it be 3 hours just to see how I can handle it? I just love it. And I love listening to the sounds and so forth. So that's another kind of sensory deprivation, and I just love it. Julie says, wow, Cafe Mnemonic, great idea. You would need a local group that would show up regularly, then we could see the interaction between you and the students. Interesting for us far away students. Yeah, so if I do it, the goal is to have lots of live streams so that the international community can see, and then maybe they'll say, hey, I better go and visit this place in real life and come visit. Get on a plane, on a train, on a bus, in a car, whatever it is, to come and hang out there. And maybe because Gary's books are only going to be in physical copy, you buy it at this place. I don't know if you saw a recent video I did on mind mapping a book called The Diary of a Bookseller by Sean Bithell. But I was so into this, and it just reactivated this I must have a bookstore kind of feeling. I don't know if I ever will or not. I mean, the logical thing is to go find existing businesses, see if I can contribute in some way and so forth, and yada, yada, yada. Like I always teach with memory, one sip at a time. Study, implement, and practice. So you got to study what a store is, what a cafe is. You got to implement some of those things, and you got to practice. There's no shortcuts, although the shortcut usually, or the long way around usually is the shortcut, or you find the shortcuts in the long way around. And you have the bots for you and against you. So bookstore, boring old technology succeeding. Cafe, boring old technology succeeding. But imagine one that's supplemented with YouTube lives about memory enhancement, meditation. Woo, it'd be awesome. So if you're like an angel investor or a bookstore owner or a cafe owner that you're watching this and you're like, hell yeah, that sounds good, then let's get together. Let's make it happen. Because it's not one of those things I'm going to do it on my own. Julie says you could do like a pop-up cafe mnemonic, like a pop-up restaurant. Yeah, I've thought of that too. Just buying a wagon or whatever and just rolling, just traveling, setting up the cafe wherever we got good internet, Saturday morning market. Let's have some coffee, let's meditate, let's train our memory, memorize some cards, do some magic tricks for people, etc. Maybe I have a bunch of copies of The Memory Connection there for people, maybe some Tony Buzan, maybe Happiness Beyond Thought, maybe there's the Freedom Journal. I mean, come on, one, come all, we have all our wares. Maybe, you know, the local businesses want to get involved, and we have trending cafes, Brisbane and beyond, for all the cool cafes. Whatever, I mean, why not? It's just a matter of doing it. I'm not saying that I'm gonna do it, but it would be fun. It'd be amazing. It'd be cool. It would be magnetic, I dare say. So it's good to know that there's one person who's interested in that. So let's see. Linda says, thank you for being here, Linda. Hello. Thanks for all your awesome emojis, as always. So let's see. Oh, Linda, when you say me too, do you mean you too for an actual meditation memory bookstore? Chris Natural Flow says, planning something similar as the cafe. Awesome. Well, we are going to have a chat here pretty soon. I'm back from my little holiday and massive activity that I had with the branding you stuff. Linda says, yes, you should. Okay, well, maybe. But yeah, Chris, let's bang heads about that. That could be cool. And in Germany, I could see that actually doing really, really well, based on my experience in Germany and so forth. It could be really awesome. There's lots of cool spaces in many places in Germany too, where that would be awesome. And I think that the German culture is more receptive to that kind of relaxed kind of lifestyle and chill out and so forth. In Hamburg, good. I love Hamburg. Julie says, wish you were in San Fran rather than halfway across the planet, but we are all YouTube neighbors. Yeah, I wish I was in San Francisco too. I wish I was everywhere. It would be cool. And you know what? In some sense, I am, or I have the potential to be. I mean, one of the things that I like about the digital world, even though there are risks to our brains and so forth, is that you can be all over the place. And not only that, but you can be all over the place in such a way that you can work towards having the technology get it deep enough into the grain of the computers that it will potentially be there for billions of years. Maybe, I don't know. But if you think about it, that's sort of what I work for. That's why there's links to everything and so forth. Is what is the perpetual motion machine that could potentially be built here for as long as electricity encodes and has all this stuff. Now, psychotherapeutically speaking, that is death anxiety at work, right? The like writers and content creators have a special relationship to their death anxiety because part of what's driving them must be the wish for living forever, right? Or the wish not to die, whichever it is. Others are very relaxed and comfortable with their death anxiety. I feel that I am, but I also know that I still have death anxiety, and it's part of what drives me to do the things that I do, is that unconscious wish to at least either to not die or to be eternal, which, you know, whatever, who knows? I mean, some people think that we're leading to an omega point where we're all just going to have a oneness and singularity and yada yada. I'm not totally convinced that that's going to happen, but I certainly am just aware of the fantasy elements in my mind, and that's a good, healthy awareness to have, because then you can remind yourself, well, yes, but also now, right? Just what's now? Not think too much about the other stuff. Let's do a bit of mailbag. How would you like that? I would like that. Hit thumbs up and let me know where you are in the world if you're joining us now, and if you haven't said hello, then say hello. Harold says, hey, Harold, thanks for saying hello. Thanks for being here. Can you give some tips on making an effective daily routine, incorporating exercise and stuff? Yeah, sure. So thank you for that, Harold. Well, first of all, let me know a bit more. I'm going to do a little mailbag here, and then let me know, first of all, what it is that's in your way, why you don't already have a routine. Then I can give better tips. Because just to wax messianic about, well, I do this and I do that, maybe not as useful as maybe you saying what it is that is obstructing you. Figuring out the obstructions is usually most of the battle, right? I heard it from Tim Ferriss that, and I don't know if he was quoting someone or if this is from his own mind. It doesn't matter. It's from our mind. Here it is. It's in our minds now and in your mind now. He said that whatever is between you and the task is the task. So, what is between you and the task? Then we can come up with some tips. I think that's a more powerful approach. So please let me know, and we'll do some mailbag. So yesterday, I sent out a blog post and a podcast about smartphone addiction. And it's called 3 Shocking Ways Smartphone Addiction Erodes Your Brain and Memory. And as often happens, people emailed me instead of leaving comments on the blog. By the way, if you want to help the internet sites that you like, tell Google that you like them by leaving the comments on the blog. Emailing me is good as well, because then it tells the email people that people are engaged in your email and so forth. I mean, we're constantly at war with the machines that are making decisions about what you want or don't want based on your engagement. That's why there's always this pressure. Come on, guys, thumbs up, leave a comment, blah, blah, blah. Well, we have to do that. Otherwise, this message will not spread. So your posts, your comments, your engagement matters very much. And if you want all this free education stuff to continue to appear in your universe, you've got to support it. And it will disappear. There's a war against it right now. There's net neutrality, and all kinds of people want to make it go away. And we have the moment now to make a difference, to make it stay. We have the moment every minute to do it. So that's what this is all about. Is the universe stacked against learners? No. Learners are stacked against learners because they don't engage. So how do we get them to engage? Well, I guess we just have to keep on doing the CTA, which is the call to action. Hit thumbs up. Put the comments. For years, I couldn't make myself say that. I thought it was just vile and disgusting and so forth. But the reality is it works. They say that people are silently begging to be led. So then the question is, what's your morals and your ethics if you're going to go around leading people, right? Well, maybe there's an 80-20 around that too. I don't know. Hopefully it's 80% awesome people are getting 80% of the reaction. But again, that's that recent Sam Harris Waking Up podcast, Hidden Motives, the conversation with Robin Hanson. I think you'll find it very instructive there. Not to be depressing, but it's not. There's some things that don't look so good for the fate of humanity, but no one ever gave a guarantee that it was going to be. And yet at the same time, it's so awesome if you just have the right perspective and you've shifted, and it's all going to be great. Everything's fine. It's only the way that it is. But I like to show up and see if we can make it better, and I think we can. So that's the battle. Chanel writes, I completely agree with you 100% about cell phone addiction. I'm a Generation X person who didn't own a cell phone, let alone a computer, until I was 25 years old, about to be 41 on June 1st of this year. I feel personally that the millennial generation is completely extorted with the technology, especially their phones. It's almost like they can't live without it for even a second. And then the email is quite extensive, and it actually says, sorry, this email is too long. The answer is actually the emails are not long enough. We need length. We understand through long-form discussion. We understand through conversation. And so please don't apologize for short emails and so forth. Don't apologize for long emails. Apologize for short ones, and start to understand that your understanding comes through the processing of thoughts, and get it out. Write it out. Don't worry about it being perfect. Don't worry about it having this, that, and the other thing. If you want some tips on how to write better, Christian Book, who was one of my favorite professors at university, he told me, try to make all your paragraphs about the same length. I thought this was insane at the time, but I see the wisdom and logic of it over the years, and now I do it religiously, more or less. I don't know if there's a magic secret to it, but it just tends to make things more readable. In any case, I really appreciate this email, and it is extensive, and I asked the person to email to go and post it on the actual page, because then other people can see it, and they can see how important this discussion is and have a chance to engage in it. So that's one thing. But If you haven't seen the recent blog post on smartphone addiction and listened to the podcast, please do. The podcasts are deliberately different than the posts there. There's a lot more that's said just by nature of the audio medium and so forth. If you're not an audio person, no problem, but I think what you might want to do is bring up your audio tolerance, because you have a learning hierarchy, and the learning hierarchy can be strengthened by getting outside of, whoa, that guy, he's got some strength. It can be strengthened by getting outside of your normal consumption preferences. So I go out of my way to force myself to watch videos that is not my first preference. My first preference is audio, then reading, and then video is like way down. And then actually going into social situations is also quite low, but I force myself to do it as much as possible. And the reason is because it's good for your brain, and even if they will still remain low on your hierarchy of preferences, the more you engage in all of them, the better and healthier your brain will be. Okay, so that said, Julie says, whatever it is between you and the task is the task. Love that. Yeah, it's really great. Natural Flow Chris says, does the universe want 80% to fail? I think the universe gives us everything to succeed, and we are trying to find ways around that so-called success, especially in learning. Yeah, I think we are given everything that we need to succeed, and I think there's an argument to be made that even in the worst of worst conditions, there is hope, and there's something that can be done even in that situation to make things better. And I could be wrong about that argument. There almost certainly are situations that are so bad that they are just bad, period. But yet we have all these examples from concentration camps and so on of people who are doing what they can even in those worst places, right? I don't know. I don't pretend to have the answer there. But we do have examples of people showing up to do what they could with what they had. And I think that we all have that opportunity, or most of us do. Maybe it's an 80-20 distribution, I don't know. But the more people who show up and do what they can with what they have, then the better it is for all of us. And the more we can help the people who react and smack back at the people who are helping not do that so much, then the better things become as well. So for Harold, who says, I've been trying to attend to my morning prayers and a 20 to 25 minute exercise after, then cold shower. When I do, it's not as bad as it sounds, but I don't know why I'm not consistent. Great. Well, Harold, thanks for that further detail, because that helps. So then the first thing is just to say, well, I don't know why I'm not consistent. Maybe one thing to do then is to write down the portrait of your inconsistency, right? Get it out. Brain dump. What are all the reasons why that you might not be consistent? See it in front of your eyes, on the paper. Mind map it. Figure out what are all those objections. Make them real outside of your head. When we do this, we relieve the mind of having to juggle it all, and we also make space for new ideas by externalizing the ideas that are there. That may or may not be your experience, but I predict that it will be your experience, that if you start to deal with your objections and that portrait of the lack of consistency, you're going to find all the clues that you need, knowing that you're the one who is the only one who can actually use the clues, so you may as well be the one who finds them, right? Now, if I were to do this exercise myself, because I'm like a 95%er myself, like there are days when I'm not consistent. And so then if I were to do this exercise myself, what are the reasons that I'm not consistent? Well, one of it might be is that I've allowed my calendar to get booked too early in the morning, so there's just not time. Another one might be that I didn't go to the first thing in the habit chain, which is like a domino effect, right? So there's a habit chain that I follow, and if I don't go to the first thing, but I go to the third, or I go to the fifth, or whatever, well then how is the habit chain gonna fall in the right order? or in the order I prefer. So what's the first thing, and is it systematized in a way that you follow all the time? It's if this, then that, right? Do you have that structured? That might be a thing for you. And let me know, by the way, in the comment here if that's useful for you. Then another thing would be, are these the right things for you? And are they in the right order? Are you experimenting? Are you journaling? Are you externalizing it onto paper so you can actually see the results of the test? Or are you trying to memorize the test results? And are you trying to juggle it all in your head when actually what you need to make is a chart, you need to track it over time, and you need to see and maybe make changes and so forth. Then the thing is, what are you eating? What are you drinking? Where does eating and drinking fall in this? That can be very, very useful, and so on. So for me, one of the biggest strengths and abilities has been if this, then that. So if I wake up, then the next thing that gets done must be done before the thing after that. And if you do it in that order and you follow that, then consistency is much more easy to uphold. And then I would say that if you want to be 100% consistent, is that really a realistic goal? Is there a good enough, right? So for me, I'm like a 95% or 98% or whatever you want to call it, right? Well, that's good enough, right? Then the question is, how do I protect it? How do I preserve it so that external forces don't chip at it to reduce it? So not trying to be 100%, because there really isn't 100%, right? And would that 100% even be desirable? One of the greatest things that Eckhart Tolle talks about is procrastination, and he says essentially, the worst thing you could do when you procrastinate is sit there and punish yourself for procrastinating, because procrastinating is going to happen. This is part of the unit. So don't punish yourself, and then just use these kind of principles to get more out of yourself more consistently. And I think you'll experience a significant, substantial boost that will be incredibly meaningful for you over time. So I hope that helps. I hope that gives you some tips. Let me know. And you could do no better than the Freedom Journal, for example, for tracking this, externalizing it, seeing it in front of you, and taking action on it, because it's a great tool. And it's how I am consistently showing up to Chinese, because I can't forget this. It's big, it's huge, it kind of looks like the Bible. The Chinese book is here, and I'm just like, oh, come on, another session memorizing Chinese words. But I show up to it and I do it, and the effects are incredible. This is my second run, and it's just amazing, and I'm having so much fun, like just little conversations and just learning things that are actually meaningful to me, and making sure, constantly having an eye. Am I learning something that's meaningful to me? If it's not meaningful to me right now, then sort of sift it and go maybe pick it up on the third time through. It'll probably have more meaning the third time through, but it doesn't have any meaning if I can't connect with it right now. This is what I talk about in the memory connection, right? Is how do we make things meaningful so they're useful to us right now so we actually do them? If we're not going to do them, then maybe sort, sift, and screen them for a different time, and just focus on the things that we're actually going to do that create pleasure right now, that allow us to have an outcome, right now. And so it's all about connection. Connect. I could say that 1,000 times. If some bots help, like boring old technologies succeeding, memory palaces and so on, rock and roll. I would say that probably we could make an argument that meditation is kind of like a boring old technology succeeding. Technology is a very flexible word. Techne is one of the origins here, and we've got a lot of really old technologies that we don't have to give up just because new ones have come into the world. And in fact, we would do very, very well to hold on to those old technologies and explore them and milk them for all they're worth. All right, so back to mailbag here for a minute. Alino says about the Smartphone Addiction podcast. Great article, Anthony. Society is sick all over the world, and I don't think it will get better anytime soon, considering our educational system and people's inherent desire for instant gratification. Yeah, I have also a podcast on curing the cancer of instant gratification. So if you want some more tips on developing better habits and combating that need for instant gratification, and even why it's there in the first place, because one of the ways that you combat things is understanding why they're there. Anyway, Alino continues, by checking how much time I was wasting on nonsense using the Quality Time app for Android, It's called Checky for iOS. I knew something had to be done. So I, one, removed the social media apps from the smartphone. How? I have done that myself. There's no social media except for the YouTube app on my smartphone. And my smartphone, right. I try to maintain that. There's no Facebook on nothing whatsoever. And I'm sure that I'm going to maintain that. But that's part of the thing, right? How do you maintain the habits? And so Alino continues, broke the habit of passing mindlessly through social media feeds. Great. I have kill news feed on my Facebook, so I don't see the news feed at all. It's never been a habit. Because of that, thank you for those people who created that. And he says doesn't like or share almost anything, spends 1 to 2 minutes, but then feels sucked in by the screen, stops it, and uninstalls the app. Oh, interesting. Blocked access to some websites in my browser, such as Facebook and online newspapers. There's a plugin called Block Site. Great. Well, thank you, Alino, for sharing that. Really great tips. So again, Quality Time app for Android and Checky for iOS. Brilliant. Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. And I hope that you'll add that as a post to the Smartphone Addiction blog. So, great. Well, anybody have any more questions, comments, thoughts, concerns? Harold says true. I'm actually just going to focus on slow reps, like 10 to 15 reps for all 8 exercises. Guess it'll make it clearer and more focused. Yeah, I mean, there's a huge argument for the less is more that can be made and often should be made. It's the same thing with memory palaces. It's just smaller memory palaces make for easier use, which then means more use and then greater transference of what is used into actual practice and so on and so forth. See if there's any more interesting mailbag stuff here. Let me know if you have any questions while I do that. Oh, look, someone came and left a comment. Excellent. Oh, that's Alino approving, posting this very thing that I just read right now. Thank you for that. Great. I love to see and have the comments on there, not merely to give me a little ego boost, but also because it actually helps more people find this teaching and this message so that they're able to get the kind of results they're looking for with their memory. And if they like long form comment, they like hangouts like this, then I fully understand that they're not for everybody, but I'm really glad to be able to serve those people for whom it is for, and I appreciate you all being here. And your questions and comments are all super stimulating, and I appreciate them very, very much. You should know that because it's true. And it's just amazing. There's so many amazing things going on in the world right now, and I just love to embrace everything as much as possible, and just call it what it is, right? Like, if you get irritated with a thing, then be irritated with it and let it go. Because there will be more irritating things to come, to be sure. And there'll be things that reduce irritation to come as well. So be more inviting of those and just give the irritating things their due. But, speaking of things that are potentially irritating, I've been making some trailers for the podcast episodes, and we just did one for Tansel Ali. And let me know if you're in Australia. I'm thinking of doing a live event in Sydney in August. But, we're only going to do it if there's interest. And I'd like to have Tansel and Ali and Lynn Kelly come. So I'm going to be starting to ask some questions around that. And then if there seems like there's sufficient interest, we'll make it happen. There's a couple of Magnetic Memory Method students who've done some great things in Australia. And I hope that they will be able to come as well. Harold says, oh my God, yes. Thanks, Harold. Are you in Australia, Harold? Then, if so, then it would be awesome to have you there. What I'd like to do is have it recorded, of course, and really just give people the opportunity to show up, do some practice, learn a bit more about this, and learn from more people than just myself. I mean, the whole ethics and community that I'm trying to build is a compendium of all the people who are willing to come on my podcast and speak about what they do. And so Tansel Ali's interview is so great. I'm just shocked by how that the lack of comments there and the lack of shares and so forth, because what he says in that podcast is so powerful, and my ability to spread it around is growing, of course, but it also has its limits. So we made a trailer video that just looks amazing, I think, and I'm going to put it on YouTube here in a second, just trying to get like an amazing thumbnail so more people will click it, so that more people will actually go and listen to it, so that I'm fighting the universe that seems to have a distribution of, or maybe there's a distribution that's stacking people towards failure, and I'm fighting it 100%. And if it means that I have to make extra effort for better thumbnails on YouTube, which really, quite frankly, to be honest, I don't get it. I'm a word person. I want to be compelled by words, not by pictures, or I am more naturally compelled by words than by pictures. But the world says, Google says, YouTube says, no, this image has to be super cool. It has to look really great, and it has to have this and that. So the thing is, do I sit there and say, yeah, screw you, YouTube, and or do I just say, how do I figure this out? How do I make things look more cool and more clickable? And then because the message here is so profound. What Tansel shares in that episode is just like going to set so many people free if they could just find it, listen to it, understand what's being said there, put it into their practice, and then what's the next step? Like having Tansel in an event where we can talk together in front of real people. How do we do this? I don't understand something like what it is when you think of like the Waking Up podcast, for example. He's talking about atheism and meditation together, and there's like just a million people following him on Twitter, and I don't understand what path I need to take to reproduce that for meditation and memory. But I'm trying to figure it out. And if it comes down to pretty pictures, then we'll do pretty pictures. If it comes down to like trailer videos for Tansel Ali and Tony Buzan and Lynn Kelly and so on, we're going to make it. We're going to try. We're going to do a good experiment to see if it works. But it's hard work. And it's got to be satisfying, right? We're going to do it, though. And I'm glad to hear that at least Harold is interested in Sydney. And I'm curious who would fly to Sydney, even though it's halfway across the world. Well, I don't know, but we'll see. Julie says, which podcast was that with Tansel? Which episode? Well, it's actually very recent, and it may be that I didn't give it the right title, but this week's podcast is on smartphone addiction, and the previous week's is on Tansel. It's called Tansel Ali, on how gratitude can help you remember almost anything. And I can't type right now into the chat here, or maybe I can. I wonder if I open up my own video here, if I can type it. Julie's got it. Julie, I guess you can't type. Maybe I can type URLs into this. Give me a second here while I actually do an experiment live. I'm sure this is boring as heck, but sorry about that. But isn't this cool? We're like doing the future together. So I'm watching myself live now. Oh man, I look horrible. Bad skin today. Oh well. Let me post my own link as one of my sock puppet. It's not my sock puppet selves, but from my different YouTube channel. And there we go. Did it show up? No. Remove any web addresses and type again. So I'll just say type magnetic memory method dot. Oh man, I'm hacking my own self here. Type magnetic memory method and Tansel Ali. There we go. Showed up. Let's see if I show up on my own screen here. Yeah, there I am. Script Castle, by the way, is my film studies channel. I'm going to probably delete it, I think. I've decided, when you talk about focus and concentration and so forth, no one really seems to care about my film studies stuff. So I think I'm just going to delete it. Forget it. Get it off my mind. Because one of the greatest tortures that you have is when you have things that are on your mind. You've got to-do lists and so forth. And if it's not engaging anyone, back to the topic at hand here, well, what's the point, right? What's the point? And who knows? Maybe I should persist. Who can say? Obviously I have quirky and idiosyncratic things to say about film studies and so forth, but there's no question in my mind of its value. But then there's just, Are people engaged? Are they interested? And how long and for and with what intention and what intensity do you bang your head against a wall, seeing what you can do? Yeah, and it may be the universe is just saying, no, this is not your thing to do. This is not your place. Talk about memory and meditation. So that's what we'll do. And to make that more clear, more focused, then maybe it's time to let that other topic go. Through death can come rebirth, right? It's a wonderful, wonderful theme throughout literature. So why not in life? Yeah. Okay. So mailbag. Ali says, I find myself taking a long time to remember, and I want to learn new memory techniques to improve my learning techniques. Okay, well, memory techniques are a learning technique, so keep that in mind. In terms of how much time you're taking, the way that you get speed is you practice things that increase speed. So one of those is playing cards, and so I'd recommend picking up a playing card practice for sure. And you can also just put all kinds of things on cards. Just make sure that you're not falling into rote learning habits from the cards, but actually legitimately memorizing on the cards. And the way that you do that is you have instead of the definition of a word, for example, you have the mnemonic that you created to trigger it. I do that in the Freedom Journal. So I'll write down in the morning a description of the magnetic imagery, so that I'm not feeding myself the definition of the word, and there won't be the pinyin there either, and then I'll get that back. That's when I need it. I don't always need it. And you challenge your brain in different ways. You challenge in different levels, and your brain will love you for it. All right. So Mosa Lingua Deutschland has emailed me. Hallo Anthony, vielen Dank für den Artikel. Ich finde ihn sehr interessant. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's business stuff. Great though. Great that they want to publish some German stuff. They want it to be more about vocabulary though. Isaac says, my biggest problem is connecting the details and staying focused for a long time to assimilate the data. Focus is a practice, and assimilation is a practice. Some of that assimilation will happen just when you're not doing anything, right? So if you encode it correctly, then that assimilation will happen on its own. Encoding happens during your sleep. There's some more recent information though about how much people encode during sleep relative to their age. So one of the spaced repetition softwares posted something recently, some research about how you should use their software before you go to sleep, and that will help you learn the language better. But I think that they're going to find that that's actually relative to age, and also you have the problem that using the devices before sleep can be very disruptive to sleep. So, I mean, it's tit for tat in some sense, right? There may be an advantage, but really the better advantage if you're going to quiz yourself before sleep would be from paper. And that's why I use this. I don't want my sleep disrupted by having exposure to machines. If you're going to expose yourself to machines, make sure you have glasses that are filtering out some of that light. That I've read in some of the science, it's as strong as taking a shot of espresso, looking at a screen in the dark. So and it doesn't mean that you don't fall asleep, and it can mean that it just disrupts your sleep at multiple levels. So keep that in mind if you're going to follow that kind of advice. Chris Naturalful says, loves the idea of not putting the book title into the mind map. Retrieval is so powerful, in my opinion. Yeah, it is. You do not want to give your brain too much information. There's an interesting app I came across back in the day for Bible verse memorization, and what they were doing is they'd show you a verse, and then they would show you the verse again with missing words, right? And there's a brilliance to that, because it's asking you to do some work. Look, nobody's going to get anywhere without work. But do you have to call it work? Do you have to? No, I call it play. I call it showing up. I call it engaging, doing something. For the for the pleasure of not being a pathetic human being who does nothing, right? Sip at a time, one sip at a time, study, implement, practice. And I think that once you just get into it, then you find the ways to keep yourself getting into it, then you'll find that it's more and more fun. And it doesn't mean you don't hit a wall sometimes and you're like, oh, do I? You're going to. It's just going to happen. And the more you acknowledge that, then the more you can show up cheerfully to even that feeling itself, right? And just know you're going to die, you know? So don't punish yourself. So much of this is just getting out of self-punishment, figuring out where that self-punishment comes from, and then saying, bye-bye, bye-bye self-punishment, and so forth. Michael says, for a wind down before sleep, I end up taking a shower with incredibly low light while walking through a memory palace. I review in low light, and when you get to the end of the palace, your brain feels like the day is over. That's brilliant, Michael. Thank you for sharing that. Really great strategy. Yeah, showering in low light is fun. I shower almost always in the dark myself. I don't turn on the light, but there's light in the room because of whatever's coming through the balcony here relative to where the washroom is. But that's a great tip. And I do a lot of memory palace work in the shower. Julie says the computer night glasses really work. Yeah, I normally wear them when I'm on the computer, but I didn't wear them now. I'm doing a lot of study about micro decisions that people make and so forth, and thinking about how one should change their look to reach more people. There's something really disingenuous about it, so I don't do that much, but there's obviously something to it, right? If you want to increase the reach and so forth. I'm not sure the extent to which that I do and I do not. I'm very, very aligned with the things that Gary is saying about not publishing digital books, only making this physical, precisely for the reasons that he cites in the discussion that we had on his blog. But one just does what one is called to do at the end of the day, and you can engage in what you're called to do, and you must, or suffer the consequences. And there's a lot of really interesting messages going on about that right now in the world. The kickback to those messages is also very fascinating. So I'm referring a fair amount to the Jordan Peterson stuff. And it's like really scary actually too, because of the way that the machines read information and so forth, and the penalizations that YouTube is making to certain channels who put out certain messages and so forth. Like one almost goes in fear of saying that name for the repercussions it might have to one's channel. Because it potentially will. Strange, right? When really the message is so clear and obviously valuable. And if you disagree with it, that's great, fine. But to come back with censorship? Really? Crazy. Yeah. Weird world, getting weirder. As the Joker says, whatever doesn't kill me only makes me stranger. Well, whatever doesn't kill us only makes us stranger too, it appears. But, you know, we just do what we can, and we keep doing, because doing is its own antidote in many ways. All right, so great message here from Adolfo, one of the students. We did a tailor-made video for him. Here's a message. I have to study hard, but I seem to be constantly dealing with the mindset of escaping out of everything. Do you have anything to say, as I wish to cope with my mental boredom of everything? Do you think you could provide me with any detailing to focusing on the present without straying in my illogical thoughts? Yeah, that's from Zubair. Thank you, Zubair. We've been talking about that all day on this session. So one of the things, of course, is to just recognize that it's there, which you've done. And then I would say journal about it. Get a journal for journaling about it. And, well, again, it's just sort of like find your obstructions, find your objections. Find them and describe them, mind map them, journal them, and then use the journal to figure out what you're going to do against those objections, or work with the objections, understand them as the energy that they are, and then tackle them on their own terms in some sense, and really, really show up to it consistently. So again, I recommend the Freedom Journal. I recommend everything in Happiness Beyond Thought. From the memory angle, I recommend the Memory Connection and the program that comes with it to encourage you over time to make sure that you're showing up. And, one sip at a time. Study, implement, and practice. Find the teachers you like. Find the teachers you like and then support them. One way you support them is by doing what they tell you to do. And doing it in a way that actually tries to understand what it is that they're telling you to do, and not find loopholes in it, right? That's where excitement is. So Zubair is asking, how do I deal with the mental boredom of everything? Well, one of the ways that you deal with mental boredom is you just submit to doing it anyway, even if it is boring. There's so many boring things that I have to do, but I always see them as polishing the bowl, right? And the more that you just do it, you're polishing the bowl, and then it gleams. Oh, it gleams so brightly. And then some tarnish comes, and so then, you go and polish that bowl. And you think about the enjoyment of the gleam. And then it comes back, and it gleams, and then some tarnish comes, and then you go and polish it some more. Another sort of way of thinking about this is that, and I read this somewhere, if you want to dye a piece of cloth yellow as the sun, well, then you find some dye that is yellow as the sun, and you put the cloth in the dye, and then you put it and you let it to dry, and then you'll see, oh well, it's not as yellow as the sun. So then you dye it some more, then you let it dry, and it'll fade, and then you dye it some more, and then it just gets saturated with so much of that. Is it ever going to become as yellow as the sun? Well, if the sun explodes and absorbs everything, well, then it is going to be the sun, right? But along the way, what you do is you just keep immersing it in the sunness of the world, and it'll eventually become as bright as it's going to get by repetition of the thing, and you just keep showing up to it. And as you do that, you'll learn little tricks. Oh, well, I don't just put it in the dye, but maybe I do it this way. Oh, and then maybe I do it the opposite direction. And then maybe I just don't squeeze out the water this time, and maybe I leave it for 4 hours this time instead of 3 hours. This is the science of things, right? Showing up repeatedly, studying what's happening, finding new things, implementing those things, and then practicing the practice of doing those things. It's really powerful. Pink Ribbon's here. Hey, Pink Ribbon. Thanks for saying hello. If you're just joining us, let me know that you're here. Hit that thumbs up. Pink Ribbon says, talking to gratitude. It was you that talked about helping other people a few hours a week as a way to be happier, or was it you? It was in a past polyglot gathering. I may have said that. Look, how do you get the most out of memory techniques? It's not just using them personally. You teach other people how to use them too. You'll never even understand them properly or as deeply as you can if you don't teach other people. Now, it doesn't have to be memory techniques, but it can be anything that you've learned, right? So when I studied sitar, one of the first things I learned is that if you want to become ustad, right? Ustad or whatever, guru, blah, 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 all these fancy terms and stuff, 20 years of learning, 20 years of practice, of performing, and 20 years of teaching, right? Now, you can do them at the same time, but that's basically what it's going to take, and you've got to do all three. You've got to practice and study and learn. You've got to perform, and you've got to actually teach. And that's the path to mastery. That's the path to feeling good. It's the path to everything. Some people call it karma yoga, right? So there's yoga that we use in the West, and we just mean moving in different ways on the floor and standing and yada, yada, yada. But then there's the movement of what you give, what you offer to the world. And when you're a language learner, how can you do that? Well, you offer to teach what you know, both about your mother tongue and what you know about the language that you've learned. And you give it out to the world, and that will be an act of gratitude that will reward you so many ways you don't even know until that you do it. And if you think too much about what that reward is going to be, then you're just going to kill the reward or damage it. It's very, very, very essential to let go of the outcome in advance. Because if you worry too much about the outcome, expectation is the fastest path to suffering ever, right? So just let go and give. That's karma yoga. And make it part of your learning. Pink Ribbon continues, maybe we're too much focused on ourselves, and this brings feelings of pride. We see the result as just another way to show our achievements to others, just another way to feel better than other people, as if it were a competition. Maybe if we stop learning in order to brag about our achievement, then we are prone to accept negative aspects of learning, such as forgetting, tiredness, etc. Great points. Thank you for sharing them. Those are amazing points, excellent points. They are the perfect points at this moment. Do you think, Pink Ribbon asks, that helping other people would help in being less focused on our ego, and then to live the entire process of learning in a more relaxed way and bringing down that 80%? Do I think that helping other people would help us being less focused on our ego? You know, here's an interesting thing about that. You've got your ego, right? So maybe the answer is to focus on the ego you've got, understand it, find out what energies it has, what tools it has, and then let that ego, boom, do its thing, right? So there's a failure that I could say that I have, which is that I've always been an ego-based teacher. I talk about myself a lot, right? And I talk about things through the lens of my reading and demonstrate my thoughts and so forth and yada, 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 which connects with a certain amount of the people in the world and causes a certain amount of the people to turn away. Now, the alternative to that is to be the PowerPoint dude who doesn't talk about myself, doesn't make references to myself, just pure reference to the information. Now, you can do that. It can then reach other segments of people out in the world, and there's a place for it and so forth. But I never found that it really did much in terms of creating excitement and interest and so forth, in the same way as just understanding more about my personality and my stories and the things that have happened to me and how that has an impact, which is one of the reasons why I learned not to fear or worry about talking about my history with manic depression and the whole medicalization of my experience and what I did to get out of that, because it just helps people. And it helps them deeply in some cases, especially because it's so tied in my life to meditation and to memory exercise and to what memory can do. And so you've got to just find for yourself what it is. And how you find it is you do, and then you'll find out what's right for you because you'll feel what's connecting and so forth. And then you're going to get criticism from people, and instead of reacting to the criticism, which sometimes you might, you think deeply about the criticism and try to think about what is that criticism trying to tell you, right? And even if you do react, then think deeply about what your reaction was to that criticism, so that you can, even if you were to have reacted, you can still have that guide your future actions in ways that can be very helpful to the world. So I genuinely take a deep interest in when snark comes and negative commentary comes. I joke about it and I call it snark on purpose and so forth, but it's actually really valuable, and it is the universe trying to tell me something. And so, you know, when people say, oh, if you only did this, then you would have 100,000 followers on this channel and blah, blah, blah. And the reality is that they don't know that, and I don't know it either, but I still listen to it. And then they're talking about animation, so I went out and sought an animator. And it's really odd because I went and sought animators and no one is answering. Like, I can't believe the way business is in the world that people don't answer. Like, hey, I would like to hire an animator for my YouTube channel. Never hear back from the person, right? Now, Google could be at fault for that because Google is deciding who gets emails and who doesn't these days. So, you know, you can pay oodles of dollars for your email account and it don't matter. You're not going to get the service because someone else is deciding where email goes and so forth. Or maybe they just haven't opened it yet because they got 1,000 things and yada, yada, yada. But what ended up happening is I was riding my bike, or I took my bike out of the building the other day. This guy named Charles said, hey, where's the best bike shop in Brisbane? And I said, oh man, where I got this bike, which is Jube by Scott. And there's a guy over there, Jim. You got to go over there if you're in Brisbane. It's just brilliant. It's the best bike shop in the city. And it's got art on the walls and just amazing bikes. And anyway, it turns out he's a professor of animation studies here at the university who could connect me with animators. So, interesting, right? Synchronicity, I don't know, universe universe telling me something, yada yada, confirming, disconfirming, I don't know, I don't care, but it's there, and it came up, and it's come up on the YouTube channel. So is that going to mean that now there's going to be 100,000 followers to this YouTube channel? I don't know. That's up to you guys. It's up to you for sharing these videos, sharing the posts on my website, and so on. I ask you to do it. I had to find it in myself to say, hey guys, do this. I didn't want to do it for years. It actually slowed the growth of this. Or maybe the growth is happening just as it should be, and so on. But to answer the question, Pink Ribbon, is just like there's ego in this, and to deny the ego element of it is to be completely out of touch with the world as such. And it's to be completely out of touch with the best possible teachings I've ever found in terms of meditation and so forth. Because the point is not to get rid of the ego. The point is to integrate the ego into the beingness of now, and to recognize it for what it is, and to optimize it, and to have it doing the best that it can do, and to have the ego itself even develop the ability to be observant of the self that observes it. Right? Now, I don't know the extent to which that sounds like it makes sense, and I don't know how else to say it, because a lot of these ways that we talk about non-duality and whatnot are they sound like riddles and so forth, and you don't want to take it too far. At least I don't, because there is a real world out there. But where that real world happens is in you, and only in you, and only in me. And there's a thing where we're connected. And so you are my ego, and I am yours. And we are all the egos of all the people. It's how that things like the Enneagram developed, and how that things develop where we're able to do detailed character analysis and studies. And it's why when we go to movies, we say, yeah, that movie impacts me. It means something to me. It's telling the truth. There's something real in that movie. And it doesn't mean that you can connect with every movie under the sun, but there are some that obviously really hit the mark, right? And they reach so many of us. And there's elements in those stories that reach so many of us precisely because of how much they are tapping into the ego, all right? That we all share, that we all have a part of us in us. So, yeah, I mean, the hero's journey and the call to adventure and the denial of the call and all that stuff, it is not different from us because it's in movies. It's in movies because it's in us, right? And we're trying to tell ourselves something through all these stories. We're trying always to tell ourselves something. And so, like, I'm not a Jungian fan necessarily, but the wisdom in all of that stuff is to say, what are we trying to tell ourselves here? And why is it that thousands of people get together to make movies to tell millions of people a message, right? So the idea that there's no collective unconscious, you don't even have to buy into it to understand that there's a collective act of storytelling that is telling very conscious stories in collaboration between thousands of people who get together to make one movie and the millions of people who get together in movie theaters around the world and in front of DVD players around the world, or whatever, right? Streaming Netflix things. They're all getting together. They're assembling together to have this moment of connection together, asynchronously and synchronously, right? You can watch Black Sabbath concerts with Black Sabbath on the stage, or you can watch them with people in movie theaters, or you can watch them on the DVD. The whole point is that it's collaborations of thousands of egos getting together to create a unified experience that you will experience only as you can, as you, but only because you're connected to all of the others that conspired, that assembled, I would say, to make it happen. And then it only happens in you, because you're the only brain chemistry that exists in order for it to happen. It's just unified right then in you. And your experience of it, your enjoyment of it is there. And it all comes down to the same thing with memory. So there's a language, right, that you want to learn. Thousands of people, millions of people speak it. Maybe, unfortunately, in the case of some endangered languages, hundreds of people speak it. But regardless, you're like a wave in an ocean of that language, and you're going to get into the ocean and be the wave in the ocean and so forth and yada yada yada, to the extent that you show up. And you've got a brain just like everybody else that operates on the same operating principles and mechanisms, chemically speaking, structurally speaking. And then if you're going to use mnemonics, then you're going to use mnemonics in the same basic ways that all the people who use mnemonics use it. It's just a question of discipline. It's a question of showing up, you figuring out your own way, right? And then just repeatedly doing it. So all these things all converge on the same point, which is that whatever obstacles anybody has to showing up to this task, you just got to figure out what they are, because you're not the only one who's had them. And there are people who have figured it out. And so just your ego is actually what's going to serve you in memory techniques, because you've got a history of popular culture, you've got a history of books you've read, you've got a history of ideas that only you can think, and you've got a history of memory palaces that only you can create. You bring those things together in your own practice, mapped onto a language you want to learn or a topic you want to master, and away you go. Away you go. The world is yours. The world is yours, and your ego is the thing that's going to get it to you. And then your ego is going to be the thing that lets you teach it to others, right? Or your suppression of the ego to do boring PowerPoint slides that have no personality, which can work for the particular audience that it works for. So Natural Flow, Chris says, I think you have something very cool for you in that regard in terms of animation videos. Yeah, I think animations would work great if I find the right person, a person who cares. Ideally, they know memory techniques, right? I mean, that's my quest, is to find people who care and who actually use these techniques themselves. Because for me to sit there and say, well, animate this and a little bit of that and so forth, there's a potential for deeply mismatching what's going on here. Or there's just like, just get it done and improve along as you go and so forth. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I let go of the outcome because it's the only sane thing to do. But I do, that's not without having a deep hope and wish that this just explodes, and explodes for the people that it's going to help the most, and showing up to that. So Pink Ribbon says, yeah, I see what you're saying about the ego and the non-duality. It's something that becomes apparent with time, with meditation. Yeah, I mean, it is a time thing. Everything's a time thing. Everybody wants the shortcut, but they don't understand that the shortcuts are found along the journey, along the way, however long that way is. Pink Ribbon says, I was talking on a more practical point of view, not of being a slave of the ego. If every person in the world realizes what you're saying, then peace would come as a natural thing. Sorry for the long feedback. No, please don't apologize for the long feedback. Never apologize for feedback. Length is what we need. We're being suffocated by brevity. In Hamlet, Polonius says, brevity is the soul of wit. He's one of the most important characters in that play, and he can't keep his mouth shut. Brevity is not the soul of wit. Brevity is a poison in many contexts. And so we need longer discussion. We need conversation. We need to juggle multiple pieces of information in our mind over time. Don't apologize for brevity. Read Hamlet. Brevity is not the soul of wit. Sorry, Polonius, not even you can uphold that. Neither can Hamlet, for that matter. Hamlet's soliloquy has much wisdom for all of us to learn from. But yeah, here's the thing about the thing that you said, Pink Ribbon. If every person in the world realizes what you're saying, then peace would come as a natural thing. My answer to that is that every person in the world does realize this. It's just they don't know that they know it. And the people who realize it right now are the ones who realize it right now. And then it's incumbent upon them to do what they feel that they can do as they can do it. So that's the conversation I'm having right now here, and with Gary Weber, who wrote Happiness Beyond Thought. And I feel a little bit called to nudge him in the direction of making Kindle books and audiobooks and so forth. But I'm not going to nudge too hard, because I understand he's called to do what he's called to do. And I think he and I would agree, or at least converge, on the fact that there's no free will in this. So, this whole thing is just the dance, the conversation the world is having with itself, right? And we do the things that we're going to do. And the question is, there's like this gap of influence that we can have on ourselves and on others that involve all kinds of ethics and wonderful things. And some of us have wisdom that others don't. Some of us have experiences that others don't. And how do we use that? What are we going to do? And what are we going to do as things change and so forth? This is the most important conversation to be having in the world, and I really appreciate your contributions to it, because that's what makes it great. That's what makes it grow. That's what makes it profound. That's what makes it interesting. And I appreciate all of the wonderful, wonderful contributions today. I appreciate it more than I can express. And thank you, Chris, for being here. Thank you all for being here. Pink Ribbon says, unrelated, but what do I think about caffeine? What about caffeine do you want to know that I think about it? Just to give me a bit more rope to hang myself with, so to speak. Caffeine versus coffee. I mean, if we're talking about caffeine, then that's quite writ large. But if we focus it on coffee, that can be a bit more meaningful, or at least the caffeine that may be in chocolate and so forth. But in general, what do I think about substances, let's say, that alter the consciousness and alter the physical unit, which then alters the consciousness? Because you can alter your physical unit through consciousness without the intervention of substances. Let me say that Happiness Beyond Thought by Gary Weber has some great stuff about food, the role of substances that you bring into your body. So you want to read that for some deeper thoughts about that. But generally, it's an N=1 situation, and you need to find out what substances do what to you. And then you need to ask yourself, do I want these things to be done to me? And if I don't, what am I going to do to stop them from being done to me? And if I do, what am I going to do to optimize that process? So for me, with coffee and raw cacao and so forth, I've really found a place that I'm super, super comfortable with, and I like it a lot. And I know my limits with it. It really helps me focus and concentrate without a doubt. But there's a threshold. Cross that threshold, not going to feel good. Same thing with chocolate, bing chi ling. I love chocolate ice cream, to say it in Chinese. You know, that, like, it's my one cheat. It's the one cheat that I really have, that I can think of. I don't think I have any other cheats. But if I overdo chocolate ice cream, I'm going to get pimples. I'm not going to feel good. My heart's going to race in a particular way because it's sugar, and it's really the only sugar that I take that's not sugar in grapes or whatever, fruit. But there's a threshold. I need to know that threshold. No one else knows it because no one else is me. And so with your foods, you know your thresholds, or you know them relative to showing up to the task of sorting it out, figuring it out, and being your own scientist in the laboratory of your own body. There's no one else can do it for you. So Pink Ribbon continues, well, I was addicted to other substances in the past, but it wasn't hard for me to cut them out. But with coffee, I can't be able to seem to work without it. Okay, well then the question is, for how long can you go working without it? Probably 72 hours and you should be fine. But I don't know, I'm not a medical professional, but how long have you pushed it? Push it for as long as you logically can and just test the truth of that statement. You say you can't seem to be able to work without it. Well, for how long? Because you'll probably come out the other side more quick than you think if you just push and persevere. Use journaling to help you along the way, and so forth. So can coffee be a dangerous substance? Oh, well, look. Water can be a dangerous substance. You can drink yourself to death with water. I can't proclaim a universal truth about whether coffee is a dangerous substance or not. You could go reductio ad absurdum and say, hey, it's a dangerous substance because people who grow coffee are being exploited in cruel and unusual ways. So there's that angle to pursue. There's people who are clearly abusing it in their daily life, and then there's other people who are producing, even recently, new studies that are saying, hey, if you want coffee to be an anti-carcinogen, then you better drink 5 to 6 cups a day. Well, which cups, right? Which coffee beans? Which brews? Which quality, you know? So there's going to be people who are going to read that, and they're going to be like, hell yeah, I just got licensed to drink 5, 6 cups of coffee a day. And then they're going to go and read, or they're going to go and brew and drink coffee that is contaminated with all kinds of carcinogens that completely undoes undoes, sorry, my English is fading here. It completely undoes the whole point. So, it's pharmacon. You guys know pharmacon? It's the principle that the cure is the poison and the poison is the cure. So, the world's a pharmacy. The internet's a pharmacy, a giant pharmacy filled with cures that poison and poisons that cure. You got to find your own balance. You got to find your own mix in there. You got to test for yourself. And you need to find people who empower you, to educate you, that show you that that's the way. I hope that I do my part in that, and not sacrifice too much in the mix, because there is a place for the iron law and the 10 commandments of this, that, and the other thing, but I don't have them. I have the 10 commandments of memory, and I think that all people will be served if they at least give it a fair trial run. And those 10 commandments, of course, are revealed in my free course at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. They're also revealed in the memory connection, which you can get at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. And you're still in time to get the March issue of the print newsletter, which is also at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. If you care about this message, if you care about this and you just want to support it, that's a great way to get involved and support it. Other ways are, being engaged, hitting the thumbs up, commenting on the blog, commenting on the channel here, and generally being involved. Pink Ribbon says, okay, maybe I'm overdoing coffee, but now it's hard to undo it. Yeah, well, just work at it. Work at it and figure out what it is that you're willing to do now that's going to have a quick victory. And a quick victory could be as simple as, I usually have coffee at 10 a.m. I'm going to have it at 11 instead. I do this actually myself. So I fast twice a week, and I push the hours of my fast. So I like to have coffee even when I'm fasting, but fasting and having coffee is not fasting, right? So what I need to do is I need to push the hours. And a quick victory is getting to 12 p.m. when I might normally break the fast and say, heck, I'm going to go to 1 and see if I can do 1. Now, the odd thing is if I just start doing other stuff, the next thing you know, I know it's 2 p.m. And it's like, whoa, that worked, right? And just play little games like that, for example. But I can't tell you which games you should play. Invent your own games. Those are the best games to play. But you can play my games if you want. Those are some of the games that I play. And, I really, really recommend boring old technologies succeeding. So journal it. I highly recommend the Freedom Journal for doing that. But you can just get out any old journal. Why not? It's useful because it externalizes what's in your head, outside of your head. And then that makes free space for other things to be inside of your head that I would argue can never be inside of your head if you don't get the other stuff out first. I think there's a strong argument to be made about that. Processing power requires defrag, so to speak. I don't like computer brain metaphors, but there is something to them. It's like a cup. There can't be more water in this cup unless the water that's in it is emptied. So, how do you empty it? Well, you can drink it, you can pour it out. Lots of ways to empty a cup. You can use a straw, or you can use your hand to pour. You could potentially get some sort of vacuum that might draw it out. There's all kinds of creative ways. You could use a spoon. We could just sit here all day thinking about the ways that you could empty a cup. You could have an animal that's able to empty the cup come and drink out of the cup to empty it. You could have evaporation, empty the cup. You could freeze the cup so that the ice falls out just by turning the cup over, banging it a little bit, right? Lots of ways. Maybe there's some more we can think of. And that's a great mental exercise, by the way, is just sit there and what are all the ways that a cup could be emptied out of water? If you ever get a chance to meet Tony Buzan, he apparently, I saw it myself, I don't know if he does it every time, but he has a great way of opening up games like this, which I enjoyed immensely. So, and speaking of Tony Buzan, this is the memory book, but he has a new book coming out called Mind Mapping Mastery. Or is it Mind Map Mastery? I didn't memorize the title yet. I should. But I've ordered it at my local bookstore. To support the local bookstore, please support your local bookstores. If you haven't ordered a book lately, why not give it a try? It feels good. Get to know the people, talk to them. and tweet to them that you ordered a book from their store to support them. So the bookstores stick around, last. Go ask the library to order the books for you. Now, if we have the 80-20 principle here, then maybe 20% of the people listening will actually do that. Or maybe none will. I don't know. But knowing that there might be that distribution reliably in the universe, the question I have is it worth making the pitch, the call to action anyway? Is it worth the call to adventure? Well, I think we better all hope so. Because if we don't have people out there making calls to adventure, then you might never get called to adventure. And that'd be a very sad thing indeed. And I encourage you to make calls of adventure to others as well. And how are you best suited to do that? Well, be the hero of your own life and do something, accomplish something. It can be as simple as creating one memory palace and memorizing 10 pieces of information. Heck, memorize 4. Just get in there and do it. And then you are qualified to make calls to adventure. And you're more and more qualified the more you show up to that thing that you're doing, if it's memory training or whatever. You will find so much deep and lasting gratification from that it will completely change your life. It will make your life so much better, and you will find that you have a grand old time that you probably didn't even imagine was possible to have until that you do it, and do it consistently. And if it doesn't work out the first time, try again. Try a couple of times. Try a few things. Too many people give up too quickly, and there may be a distribution rule doing that, guiding that. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting laws in math and so forth. The question is just like, if these things are true, what are you going to do in the face of their trueness? I often think of Nietzsche's myth of the eternal return. Do you know the myth of the eternal return? Basically, it's the question of, if you were somehow cursed or doomed to wake up and live the same day over and over and over again, like a Groundhog's Day kind of movie life, what could you be doing today to ensure that that curse was not a curse at all, but a blessing? How could you live each and every day in such a way that you would be cheerful about the curse that you would have to live it over and over and over again, every single day for all eternity? It's a very, very compelling puzzle or mental exercise. And you start taking action on it and actually start doing those things. Nietzsche has some funny parts where he talks about really the way that you do that is you eat well every day, go for a walk every day, fart when you need to. it's in there, and be like Nietzsche. That's basically what he concludes in his philosophy, which is ironic, a bit of a joke, but he's pointing at something. Because you can't be like Nietzsche. You can only be like you. And the world needs you to be the best possible version of you that you can be. And only you can be that version, right? And you don't know just how much that you can be that version unless you give it a try. And keep on trying, keep on showing up. And what the heck else are you going to do anyway? Tomorrow's going to come, whether you like it or not. So why not design the tomorrow that you're going to love and cheerfully engage with? Sip at it. Study, implement, practice. That's how you get there. And you keep on getting there. And you get there and you get there and you get there. So listen, everybody, thank you very much for having a great session today. I really appreciate all the input. If you're watching the replay, let me know in the comments down below what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what you think about today's theme. And I'd really love to know. There have been several questions raised in my head today that I'd love to hear your feedback on, and I imagine that you have some very, very good insights, and I hope that I am honored and blessed enough to hear some of them. If you haven't taken my free course on how to create an effective memory palace, go to magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. There, that's printed a little more nicely, YT. And go to magneticmemorymethod.com/connect for more information about the memory connection. And definitely check out Happiness Beyond Thought by Gary Weber. I think it's one of the most powerful books in the world, and it should be in your collection, as should his new one be. So when you go to his blog, you will find an announcement of the next book and how to order it, and you'll see me chatting away, gently urging, calling for an audio version and a Kindle version and so forth. But who knows if it's going to happen. But I understand if it's not going to happen, because I do something similar with the memory connection, although I might make an audio version. And that's at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. Paper. Only paper. Only this paper exists here right now. There's something tremendously exciting about that. I don't know why, but there is. And so enjoy yourself, everybody. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you, and let me know in the ways that you feel called to let me know. Silence being one of those ways. What you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're feeling. And Julie says, thanks so much. Audio version of the memory connection. Yes. Okay, so let me see about that. I don't know that I feel called to do it. I did start, and there's this sample of it, but I'm not sure if it translates that well into audio. But one of my I'm planning some new books, actually, that I want to write. And they will be available in Kindle and print and audio. But I probably won't do the audio myself. But I have been wondering if I should start doing audiobooks, my own audiobooks. I wonder if that would bring a level of what we've been talking about today, if they would bring something to it, or if it's actually better left in the hands of professional narrators. Because I think the audiobooks that I do have, especially the ones that are for the more simple things, are like really well narrated, and they're handled really well. So I don't know if you've heard any of them, but I'd love more feedback, and I wonder if it would be a good thing if I did my own audiobooks. Interesting thoughts. But in any case, I would love for an audio edition of everything to be there. But Julie says, yes, not sure if it would translate, but if it did, it would be great. You should do your own audiobooks. I'm a voice teacher. You must do yourself. So much more sense. Oh, well, thank you for that, Julie. You know, one of the reasons I don't do it is because I can't follow a script very well, and I don't want to follow scripts. I like to, I get excited. Oh, my mind jumps over here, boom, 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 boom. And obviously there's great merit and virtue in just following the script. But that's one of the things of having a professional narrator, because they don't know, they just do it. They don't know the topic necessarily, so their mind isn't being flooded with all the alternative things that you could have been writing at that time, but you didn't write because you didn't know. That's why all books are essentially always, ever, eternally in beta. In any case, great feedback. I appreciate it, and I will put it into the percolator along with the coffee and the beans, or the water, hot water, and see what comes out the other end. Julie says, I still say the tone of your voice will convey volumes. Yeah, I think that's true. I'll never forget hearing William Gibson narrate one of his books, and it's just like, no, please no. But I'm sure that his diehard fans really loved it. Stephen King's narration of On Writing is brilliant. Like, it has to be him. That's true, for sure. Really wonderful narration. Who else? I'm trying to think who else. But Dan Simmons' Drood is so brilliantly narrated. Michael says, I personally enjoy your narrations and any tangents you may add. Oh, thank you for that, Michael. Yeah, I mean, I know it's not for everybody, but I love tangents. That's precisely what I love about podcaster, or like the Waking Up podcast, for example, is that things just go in different directions. And I think it's healthy for the brain. It's the demonstration of thinking out loud. And especially when there's multiple people. And that's what I like about interviewing. And that's why I want more people to see hear the Tansel Ali interview on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. I find it really challenging to promote things and to promote them over the long term so more people hear things, but I show up as best I can to that challenge. But there's a reason why that it's so valuable, even if you're not audio oriented. The tangents things that come up is very healthy for the brain to listen to, because you're tracking things and you're like, oh, I wonder if they'll come back to this previous point. And so you're holding on to the previous point. And then, or even if you're not holding on to it, you have the opportunity to recognize it when it comes back, which is itself inherently an act of memory, an exercise of memory, because you're like, oh yeah, there's that point again. And then you connect things back, you mix and match, you're juggling in your mind. It cannot help but be useful. Julie says, if you had a bad voice, I would tell you, Anthony. It is inviting, but I understand the tangent point. Yeah. Yeah, so podcasting, of course, is really good for the tangenting, but an audiobook has formal considerations. And then, of course, you have this battle of all the different learning types. So one of my deep concerns, and I don't know how to solve it, and I don't think it's solvable, is there are people who want to know what something is. They need to know what something is as soon as possible. There are people who need to know why it's important as soon as possible. There are people who need to know how it works as soon as possible. And there are people who need to know just the action steps as soon as possible. And so how do you do all of that in like 30 seconds so you capture all four of them? Or how do you do it? And I tried to do it as best I could in the memory connection. And it's just sort of like, hey, don't leave, because there are four kinds of people who learn, and spelling all that out. But then, there's going to be this fifth person that you can't capture, who's just like, oh my goodness, this guy has the wherewithal to explain to me what kind of learner I am. Gone, right? So and half of me says good riddance, and the other half of me is like, oh my God, how can I do this? And there is something really, really important to understand, for all people to understand. You can't have it all. You can't. You can kill yourself trying, but you can't have it all. So you got to serve the people who you can best serve by showing up, implementing, practicing, and improving over time, and making sure that the improvements you make aren't going to damage things or make things worse. And then if they are, well, then go back or keep going and find new people over time, or whatever it is. Julie says, exactly, for podcast engines. I think it would be a good exercise for you as an audiobook. You've already organized it in your book. Yeah, I'll think more about it. I'm not sure if it'll be the memory connection, but it might be the next one. And some of those next books, well, I often feel that I jinx things. I've noticed a trend in my life is that if I talk about the projects that I'm planning or working on, then they never materialize. So I think I'll keep them secret. But there's at least 3 right now, and potentially a 4th. Maybe I have the 80-20 as well, and out of those, one would emerge. But I am one of those people who wants to have it all, and we'll see. I mean, maybe we can, but I certainly do enjoy it. All right. So Julie says, yes, next one is good. I really think it's something to think about. Thanks again. Thank you, Julie. I always appreciate all your wonderful comments and your engagement. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. One last time, if you haven't taken the free course, it's at magneticmemorymethod.com/YT. And the memory connection is at magneticmemorymethod.com/connect. We are on a roll today. The day is just getting started. This is my morning. Feel really energized and happy. And thank you, Michael, for being here. Really appreciate it. Always good to see your name. And so wonderfully excited for a beautiful morning. I hope your morning is as beautiful as mine when your morning comes. If it's not here yet, I hope your evening is as beautiful as I expect mine to be. And I hope that you will get out there and do something incredible today. Michael says, expect an email here in the next week or 2. Thank you, Michael. I hope that that email I sent you regarding the topic that we talked about, and I think I was sensitive in it not to be dogmatic and so forth, but I hope that it was genuinely useful for you. And of course, we bridge more than the memory topic because of that other topic. But I do hope that was useful, and I do look forward to the follow-up and of being of service further on that. And let's get the bots working in your favor. both the automated ones and the the boring old technology's serving. So again, guys, I just really want you to read this book. I don't know how I can convince you. If you're not convinced, tell me what I can do to convince you, and I hope that you will put some more thought into these ideas over the time to come, and let me know, share those thoughts with me, so that we can continue this conversation in a meaningful way, a rich, transformative way that makes an impact and that enables something wonderful to continue to emerge, because I really see so much warmth and positivity coming out of all these discussions. But we got to have the discussion, and we've got to have it in a way that is like the Greek word aletheia, which means truth, but it means unhiding the truth. So I think the truth is always already there at some level, or at least these. I don't want to get into the semantics of truth, although we do need the semantic discussions. Dillahunty was talking recently about the importance of the semantics, and I've always thought that semantics are very, very important. But if we just take truth as a kind of self-evident thing, that true is true on the basis of a scientific definition of truth, which is that it shows up enough times over testing, it verifies itself through demonstration of evidence, then that's what I mean by truth. Well, aletheia still stands, and that is that there are truths that are unhidden, and there's a sense of light in the word aletheia and so forth. So I think that we are here to cast light and to unhide things, and then to verify what we've unhidden, to see that it still shows up there again and again and again through testing. And we test by having repeat discussions, and discussions of length over time. And I really appreciate that you were here to be part of this discussion, and to invest the time in having it, because that is a beautiful thing, a wonderful thing, and a thing that's going to make a huge impact for years and years and years to come, long after we're no longer here, and ripple, ripple, ripple. So thank you again. Have a great and wonderful evening, and just in the ways that you understand it, always remember to keep yourself magnetic. Bye-bye.